Good evening, dear traveler, and welcome. Tonight, you will embark upon a timeless journey, not through space, but through myth, memory, and dreams. Let this be a gentle crossing into slumber, where the mind floats free and the body rests, as we step softly into the ancient world of Homer's Odyssey. In this story, no modern clock ticks, no machines hum, and no streetlights glow. We return to a world shaped by the whispers of the gods, the hush of the sea, and the silent footprints of heroes moving across golden sands. As you settle in, feeling the soft weight of blankets, hearing the distant sounds of your world quieting, allow yourself to drift across time, back to when the stars themselves were young. The wind carries us to a distant age. Imagine a map not yet drawn, a globe still mythic, where oceans held monsters and each island might belong to a god or a curse. At the edge of this world stands a man named Odysseus, clever, weathered, brave. A king of Ithaca, a warrior of Troy, a wanderer not yet home. Close your eyes. Breathe slowly. In through your nose, and out through your mouth. Let the gentle rhythm of breath guide you, like waves lapping at a forgotten shore. The sea is calm tonight. The moon is full, casting silver light across the ocean's dark velvet skin. The ship rocks gently. The sails rustle above. Now, let us begin. 10 years of war have passed beneath the towering walls of Troy. The clash of swords, the cries of the fallen, the burning of towers, all have ended. The Greeks are victorious, and the firelight of their departure flickers across the waves. Yet, for Odysseus, the battle is not yet over. His journey home will span another 10 years, filled with temptations, perils, and wonders. Picture him now, standing on the deck of his ship, his hand gripping the carved wooden rail, his eyes on the horizon. 12 ships set out with him, filled with men eager for hearth and home. Behind them, the ruins of Troy; ahead, the endless mystery of the sea. As we follow Odysseus, we'll drift in and out of waking thought. You may find yourself floating in memory, or wandering the shores of dreams. That is as it should be. This story is as much about sleep as it is about myth. Let it cradle you like the tide. And so, the Odyssey begins. The wind that carries Odysseus away from Troy is warm, salted with the scent of distant shores and stirred by the breath of unseen gods. His men murmur to one another about home, about wives spinning wool, children learning to walk, orchards heavy with olives. These memories are their compass, guiding their hearts westward. Odysseus alone is quiet. His mind drifts between thoughts. He remembers the cunning idea of the wooden horse, the moment Troy's gates opened, the cries of victory mingled with the laments of the fallen. He does not smile. War has aged him. His eyes, once bright with youth, now carry the weight of all he's seen. The sea stretches out before them, vast, eternal, unknowable. The sun dips low, casting copper light on the waves. Seabirds call overhead. The men row in rhythm, the splash of oars steady, hypnotic. You can feel the warmth on your skin, the breeze brushing gently past, like the touch of a hand soothing a troubled brow. They reach the city of Ismarus, land of the Cicones. There, still flushed with triumph, the men raid. They take wine, gold, food. The city falls easily, but pride blinds them. They linger too long. The Cicones return with reinforcements and a battle follows. Odysseus loses many good men. In the silence that follows, he sits by a fire. Sparks rise into the dark. Around him, wounded men sleep restlessly. The lesson is carved deeply: this journey will not be won by strength alone. They bury their dead at dawn. No songs are sung. The ships leave in silence. Now the sea becomes a mirror, reflecting clouds that roll slowly across the sky. Dolphins leap in the distance. The water glows with unseen phosphorescence beneath the ships, as though the gods themselves light the way. You may feel your breath slowing now, your mind adrift. That is the nature of this tale. It moves like tide water, steady, patient, filled with strange depths. Let your thoughts drift. Let the journey carry you. Soon, they will arrive at a land of dreams, where forgetting is sweeter than memory. The wind shifts gently as the fleet drifts south. The sea is tranquil, a vast canvas of pale blue and dappled gold. The sun hangs low, casting rays that ripple across the sails like the touch of a kindly god. Somewhere ahead, an island rises from the mists, low and green, veiled in soft clouds. Its shores glisten with dew, and the air carries the faint aroma of honey and citrus blossoms. This is the land of the lotus eaters, a place both beautiful and dangerous. Here, memory thins like morning fog. Time dissolves. To eat of the lotus flower is to forget your past, your purpose, your home. Odysseus sends a small party ashore. The sand is warm beneath their feet. A breeze rustles through the lotus groves, their blooms wide and pale like sleeping stars. The men wander, enchanted by the scent, the serenity. They meet the natives, gentle, smiling, with eyes like still ponds. No one hurries here. No one mourns. There is no sorrow, no striving. The men are offered blossoms. They eat. And they forget. They forget the sound of oars on water. The voices of their brothers. The shape of Ithaca. They forget their wives, their children, their king. Their eyes grow distant, their smiles vague. They sit beneath the trees, gazing at the horizon as if it were a dream already fading. When Odysseus comes ashore, he knows something is wrong. The air itself feels heavy, sleepy. He finds his men adrift in reverie. He kneels beside one and speaks his name. The man only smiles. With sorrow and firmness, Odysseus drags them back to the ships. Some weep. Some resist. But he will not leave them behind. That night, they sail in silence, the soft weeping of the wind carrying away the echoes of a place where forgetting felt like peace. Odysseus watches the island fade into mist. He wonders, for a moment, what it might be like to forget. To let go. But then he thinks of Penelope. Of Telemachus. Of Ithaca's hills bathed in morning light. He turns his gaze back to the sea. The stars shimmer above, and you may find, now, that your eyes are growing heavy. The voice that guides you drifts with the tide. Let yourself be carried, gently and without resistance, into the quiet space between thoughts. The sea is quiet in the hours before dawn. The stars still shine, bright and undisturbed in the vast black sky, as Odysseus's ships drift westward. The men sleep where they can, curled beneath cloaks or leaning against wooden beams. But Odysseus remains awake. The helm is steady in his hands, his eyes alert. He does not trust the silence. As the first blush of sunrise paints the sky with lavender and soft rose, an island comes into view, jagged cliffs rising out of the sea, crowned by green hills and thick forests. It is wild. Untouched. There are no signs of harbors, no plumes of hearth smoke rising into the air. No movement but that of birds wheeling high above. Odysseus calls to his men. The morning is still hushed, the light golden. He orders one ship to approach the shore. The others remain off the coast. The hull groans softly as it runs aground, and the men disembark. Air boots meet sand. Not soft, not warm, this shore is stony, scattered with broken shells and strange white bones. A place forgotten by the gods, or perhaps claimed by something older. They begin to climb. The grasses here grow tall, brushed by a salty wind. The further they go inland, the more the air begins to change. It grows heavier. There is a scent of dampness, of earth and musk. And underneath it all, something else. Something like rot. They come upon a cave. Its mouth is vast, shadowed, rimmed with rocks like broken teeth. Goats wander nearby, bleating softly. There are pens made of stacked stone. And inside, the echo of breathing. Deep. Slow. Heavy. This is the dwelling of the Cyclops, Polyphemus, the son of Poseidon. A creature vast and terrible, with one eye in the center of his forehead, and a heart hard as stone. Yet Odysseus does not retreat. His curiosity, his boldness, and perhaps a thread of pride, compel him forward. He leads his men inside. The cave is cool and wide, lined with massive jars of milk, wheels of cheese, piles of sheepskins, and pens where young animals sleep. The walls curve up into darkness. Above, the sound of a flock rustling, bleating softly. They feast. They light a fire. They laugh, perhaps nervously. They plan to leave with supplies before the giant returns. But then, the earth trembles. Outside, the sound of footsteps. Slow. Immense. The very stones seem to groan beneath the weight. A shadow fills the entrance. And then, the Cyclops. Polyphemus steps into the cave. Towering, rough-skinned, with limbs like tree trunks. A single great eye gleams in the firelight. He sees the men. Smells them. Hears the fire crackle, the breath in their chests. He is not afraid. He slams a boulder behind him, sealing the cave. The men are trapped. Polyphemus speaks in a voice like thunder in a cavern. He questions them. Odysseus, ever cunning, replies with a lie. He says they are castaways, lost in a storm. He does not give his true name. But the Cyclops does not care for names. He reaches down, and with a scream that echoes into the hills, he seizes two men and crushes them against the stone. The survivors retreat to the far wall. They weep. They pray. They shake with fear. The fire dies slowly. And yet, Odysseus begins to think. Even in terror, his mind remains sharp. They cannot move the boulder alone. They cannot fight the Cyclops by day. He is too strong. Too massive. So they wait. The next day, Polyphemus devours two more. Odysseus offers him wine, strong, red, sweet. A gift from the stores of Ismarus. The Cyclops drinks. And drinks. And drinks. His eye grows heavy. His limbs falter. Before he collapses, he asks Odysseus for his name. And Odysseus, smiling faintly, replies, "My name is Nobody." The Cyclops chuckles, then slumps into a drunken sleep. Odysseus acts swiftly. He and his men take a great staff of olive wood, long and thick, and sharpen one end. They heat it in the fire until it glows. And then, with all their strength, they plunge it into the eye of the sleeping giant. The roar shakes the island. Polyphemus writhes in agony. He flails. He screams. Other Cyclopes, hearing the cries, come to the cave mouth and call in, "What ails you, Polyphemus?" He bellows in reply, "Nobody is hurting me." And so they leave. Odysseus has won the moment. But escape is not yet theirs. They cling beneath the bellies of sheep, waiting for the dawn. When Polyphemus opens the boulder to let his flock out, the men cling to the underside of the animals. The wool hides them. The giant, now blind, cannot see. One by one, they slip past him. They run. They reach the ship. The sails are raised. The oars dip into the sea. And they are free. But Odysseus cannot resist. From the safety of the ship, he calls back to the shore. He taunts the Cyclops. He reveals his name. Polyphemus howls in rage. He calls upon his father, Poseidon, god of the sea. And the curse is spoken, "Let Odysseus never return home. Or if he must return, let it be late, and alone, and to sorrow." The winds grow colder. The waves rise. The journey is far from over. After narrowly escaping the wrath of the Cyclops, Polyphemus, Odysseus and his weary men rowed away from the shores of the accursed island. The giant screams still echoed in their minds, and though their ship was battered, their spirits flickered with the hope of survival. They sailed over calm waters, their eyes strained from sleepless nights and salted winds. But ahead lay a glimmering island, floating on the horizon like a dream. This was Aeolia, the floating island of Aeolus, the keeper of the winds. Odysseus and his men were welcomed warmly by Aeolus, who ruled over the winds with divine authority. The island was encircled by a wall of bronze and polished stone. There, the winds rested, tamed and ordered, in harmony with their master. Aeolus listened patiently as Odysseus recounted his long tale of war and wandering. moved by his suffering and inspired by his cleverness, Aeolus granted him a precious gift, a great oxide bag, tied shut with cords of silver and leather, in which he had imprisoned every wind save the gentle west wind that would guide Odysseus home. With this gift, Odysseus set sail again. For 9 days and 9 nights, they travelled under skies clear and blue, the bag untouched, Ithaca drawing closer with each passing league. Odysseus himself stood watch, determined to see his homeland with his own eyes. But on the 10th night, Ithaca lay within sight, so close they could smell the fires on the wind, hear the distant barking of dogs on shore. Exhausted from days without sleep, Odysseus finally lay down and closed his eyes. Temptation crept into the hearts of his crew. Suspicion had grown during their journey. What treasure did their captain hoard in that curious bag? Perhaps gold? Silver? Riches taken from Troy? They whispered in the dark, and in secret, they loosened the bag. The winds burst forth in a furious roar. Storms howled and lightning cracked. The sea thrashed with wild rage. The ship was hurled backwards, away from Ithaca, into the vast, unkind waters. Odysseus awoke to find their dream of home torn from them, the skies once again wrathful and cold. Desperate, they returned to Aeolia and cast anchor once more. Odysseus approached Aeolus with humbled eyes, carrying the empty bag. But Aeolus, upon seeing them again, stepped back. "Surely you are cursed by the gods," he said gravely. "I will not help a man so hated by Olympus." And he turned his face away. The gates of Aeolia were closed to them forever. Again they took to the open sea, where the sun beat down and hunger gnawed at their strength. After many days of drifting, they spotted another land, steep cliffs rising from the sea, strange in form, wild in color. This was the land of the Laestrygonians, a race of towering giants. Odysseus sent scouts inland to explore. They followed a winding path, lush with unknown trees and plants, and came upon a woman of immense size drawing water from a spring. She spoke no words but gestured toward a dark palace beyond. Inside waited Antiphates, the king, who seized one of the scouts and devoured him in a single bite. The others fled in horror. Too late. The alarm had been raised. From caves and cliffside homes emerged the Laestrygonian people, giants all, hurling massive stones and timbers. They smashed ships like toys, plucking men from the sea and devouring them. Only Odysseus' ship had been moored far from the harbor, avoiding the ambush. He shouted for his remaining men to swim, to row, to flee. With every muscle burning, they pulled away from that cursed land. Behind them, the waters turned crimson, and silence fell like a shroud. Only one ship remained now. The rest were gone. Hay drifted in a daze for days more, until they came upon an island encircled by gentle hills and thick forests. This was Aeaea, the island of the goddess Circe. They came ashore slowly, the quiet of the place eerie but calming. Birds sang in strange harmonies. The breeze was soft. The scent of herbs lingered in the air. They built a fire upon a hill and made camp. Odysseus divided the group in two. One would stay behind, and one would scout the land. Eurylochus, a cautious and perceptive man, led the scouting party into the forest. They moved through dense undergrowth and came upon a clearing where a polished stone house stood surrounded by wolves and lions, tamed, yet alert. Inside was a woman, tall, graceful, and radiant. She invited the men in, offered them food and drink. Her voice was music, her eyes deep and ancient. They accepted eagerly. But what they drank was laced with enchantment. One by one, they were transformed into swine. Eurylochus, who had remained outside, ran back to the camp in terror. He told Odysseus all he had seen. But this is where our story will pause. For Odysseus, unaware of what awaits within Circe's hall, stands at the edge of the forest, ready to face the enchantress. The sea is quiet now, and the island breathes. In the hush before encounter, in the deep breath before fate turns, Odysseus steps forward. And so, under starlight and salt wind, we end this chapter, not in peril, but in stillness. The journey continues, but for now, the path lies ahead, untouched, waiting. With a heart both heavy and hopeful, Odysseus gathered his men, his ships, and his courage. The wind was gentle, and the sea calm as they sailed away from Circe's island, the golden sun sinking slowly into the horizon, painting the sky with hues of pink and lavender. Days passed, and the sea changed as they approached the edge of the world, where the waters turned dark and cold. They arrived at the shores near the land of the dead, a place where the living rarely tread. The air grew still, and a quiet hush seemed to settle over everything, as if even the waves dared not make a sound. Odysseus and his men prepared carefully, digging a pit in the earth as Circe had instructed. Into this pit they poured milk, honey, sweet wine, and water, the offerings to the spirits below. Then Odysseus sacrificed a black lamb, its blood flowing into the ground like a dark ribbon. One by one, the shades, the restless spirits of the dead, began to appear. They hovered near the pit, silent and pale, their forms flickering like the flame of a candle. Odysseus's heart beat steadily, though a chill ran down his spine. He called out to them with a voice calm and clear. "Tiresias, prophet of Thebes, come forth and speak to me. I seek the path to Ithaca, the way home through storms and trials." From the shadowed depths, the great seer appeared. His eyes were clouded, yet full of terrible knowledge. Tiresias spoke slowly, his voice echoing as if from a great distance. "Odysseus, son of Laertes, listen well. Your journey will be long and fraught with danger. You will face temptations and trials that threaten to undo your very soul. But if you are wise and strong, you will return to your home and your beloved wife." As Tiresias spoke, other shades approached, heroes, friends, and foes from Odysseus's past. Each had a story to tell, a memory to share. Among them was the shade of Anticle, Odysseus's mother, who told him of the sorrow and longing that filled her heart in the world above. She spoke softly, her voice filled with both sadness and love. "My son, though I am gone, I watch over you. Be strong, and remember that love can guide you even in the darkest places." Odysseus listened, tears welling in his eyes, but his voice remained steady. He met the gaze of mighty warriors, kings, and women, all touched by the shadow of death. Their stories wove a tapestry of life, loss, and hope. Among them was the tragic Ajax, proud and unyielding, who refused to speak to Odysseus out of anger. Their silence spoke volumes of honor and grief. The longer Odysseus remained in the land of shades, the more he understood the fragile nature of life and the unending journey of the soul. He learned to listen to silence, to hear the whispers of the past carried on the still air. When the time came to leave, Odysseus poured more offerings, said prayers, and bade farewell to the spirits he had met. The journey back to the light of the living world was slow and quiet. The sun rose, its gentle rays piercing the gloom, and the chill of the underworld lifted. Odysseus and his men set sail once more, carrying with them the wisdom of the dead, a deeper understanding of their own fate, and the faint glimmer of hope that home was near. The sun was gentle as it rose above the horizon when Odysseus and his men sailed away from the shadows of the underworld, leaving behind the ghosts and memories of the dead. The sea sparkled softly under the light of dawn, a silver path stretching endlessly ahead. Though his heart still carried the weight of what he had seen, Odysseus was resolved, steady in his purpose, to continue the journey home. As they traveled, the wind whispered through the sails and the sea hummed a low, soothing song. Yet, there was a warning in the air, a sense of the unknown. Circe's voice echoed in Odysseus's mind, reminding him of the dangers yet to come. "Beware the sirens, whose voices can lure even the strongest sailor to his doom. Their song is sweet and irresistible. You must guard your heart and your men." And so, Odysseus prepared. Knowing well the peril ahead, he had his men fill their ears with beeswax, soft and warm, to block out the siren's call. But for himself, he desired to hear the song, to witness its power, yet safely tied to the mast of his ship, so he could not give in. As they neared the Sirens' island, the sea grew still, almost unnaturally quiet. The air became thick with the scent of wildflowers and salt, a strange mixture that set the nerves on edge. Then, from the rocky shores, a song began to rise, soft, haunting, and full of promise. It was the voice of the Sirens. "Come closer, Odysseus, son of Laertes. Hear our song of wisdom and joy, of all the secrets of the world. Rest with us and listen forever." The melody was unlike anything Odysseus had ever heard. It wrapped around his soul like silk, warm and shimmering, pulling at his very heart. His eyes searched the waves, longing to reach the enchanting singers. But the ropes held him fast, and though he struggled, his will did not break. His men rowed on, steady and sure, unaware of the sweet temptation that Odysseus alone could feel. The ship passed the island slowly, the song fading with distance until only the gentle waves remained. Odysseus's breath slowed, his heart calmed, and the world returned to normal. The sea was once again the safe and familiar friend that carried them forward. The journey continued, and the sea ahead narrowed into a treacherous strait, where two ancient monsters waited to challenge any who dared to pass. On one side was Scylla, a terrifying creature with 6 heads, each crowned with 3 rows of sharp teeth. Her many eyes gleamed like stars in the dusk, and from her cavernous mouths came the sound of hungry growls. She lurked in the cliffs, ready to snatch any unlucky sailor who ventured too close. On the other side, the whirlpool Charybdis spun relentlessly, a dark, swirling maelstrom that could swallow entire ships whole. The water roared and bubbled, a violent vortex that dragged everything near into its depths. Odysseus looked at the narrow passage with a steady gaze, knowing that there was no way to avoid both dangers. He had to choose the lesser of 2 terrible fates. He ordered his men to row close to the side where Scylla waited, believing that the loss of a few would be less devastating than losing the entire ship to Charybdis. The sea grew rough as they approached the strait, the waves crashing like thunder against the rocks. The air was thick with salt spray and the cries of distant seabirds. Suddenly, Scylla's heads emerged, snapping and snarling, each one seizing a man from the ship. The sailors screamed, their voices swallowed by the roar of the sea. Odysseus felt the pain of loss deep in his heart, but he did not falter. He urged the men onward, rowing hard to escape the monster's grasp. The ship passed through the strait, battered but still afloat. Behind them, Charybdis churned, swallowing the water in great gulps, its fury unmatched. The crew breathed a collective sigh of relief as they cleared the danger. After many days at sea, the weary travelers came upon the island of the sun god Helios, a place of golden fields and shining light. The cattle of Helios grazed peacefully, sacred and untouchable. Odysseus and his men camped near the shore, their bodies tired but their spirits hopeful. For many days they rested, and the temptation to feast on the sacred cattle grew stronger with each passing moment. Odysseus had warned his men to respect the gods and their property, forbidding any harm to the cattle. Yet, hunger gnawed at their bellies like a persistent shadow. One night, while Odysseus prayed silently, asking the gods for protection, the men gave in to despair and hunger. They slaughtered the cattle, their cries mingling with the solemn silence of the island. When Helios learned of this sacrilege, his anger burned as bright as the sun itself. He begged Zeus to punish the men for their disobedience. The skies darkened, and as they set sail once more, a storm rose from the depths of the sea. Lightning flashed, thunder rolled, and waves towered like mountains, smashing against the ships. One by one, the ships were destroyed, the men lost to the merciless sea. Only Odysseus survived, clinging to a fragment of his shattered vessel. Now, Odysseus was alone. The roaring sea had cast him far away from the world of men, from the faces he loved, and from the land he yearned to see again. Alone upon the vast, endless waters, he drifted until the waves gently carried him to a distant shore, a shore unlike any he had ever known. Here, the world seemed softer, wrapped in the tender embrace of time slowed down. The air was warm but gentle, filled with the scent of blooming flowers and salt carried on the breeze. The sky stretched wide and calm, painted with the colors of fading sunlight. Odysseus rose slowly from the sand, his body weary and marked by his many trials. His eyes, tired yet sharp, took in the island's quiet beauty, trees whose leaves whispered softly, fields where wildflowers swayed like dancers in the wind, and gentle waves that kissed the shore in a steady, soothing rhythm. This was no ordinary place. It was a sanctuary, a world apart from the chaos he had endured. But even here, alone in this paradise, Odysseus felt the steady pulse of longing deep in his chest, the call of home, the memory of Ithaca, of Penelope, of all he had left behind. As twilight settled, painting the sky in soft pinks and purples, a figure appeared from the grove of trees. She moved with the grace of the wind and the lightness of a summer breeze. Her hair shimmered like threads of gold, her eyes sparkled with ancient knowledge and kindness. This was Calypso, the immortal nymph, whose voice was as soothing as the island itself. "Welcome, Odysseus," she said gently. "You are safe here. Rest your weary soul in the heart of this island." Odysseus looked upon her, aware that though he had found shelter, his journey was far from over. Alone, yes, but not forgotten by fate. Her voice, soft and melodic, reached Odysseus as if carried by the breeze itself. "Stranger, weary traveler," she called gently, "you have come far and borne great trials. Rest here, and find peace in this place." Odysseus, cautious but weary, followed her to a home woven from nature's own hands, walls of flowering vines, a roof of leaves shimmering with morning dew. Here, the light played softly through the branches, creating patterns of gold and green. Calypso offered food and drink, sweet fruits and cool water from hidden springs. She tended his wounds with herbs and salves, her touch gentle and kind. Time passed slowly, measured by the rising and setting of the sun, the phases of the moon, and the ceaseless song of the waves. Odysseus found moments of rest, his body healing beneath the tender care of the island's beauty and Calypso's watchful presence. The island itself seemed alive, humming quietly with the pulse of the earth. Calypso was a constant companion, her voice a balm in the quiet nights. She sang songs of the sea and stars, of gods and heroes, her melodies weaving through the air like soft threads of light. Yet, no matter the comfort or the kindness, Odysseus's heart remained anchored to the memory of his home, to the rugged hills of Ithaca, to Penelope's steadfast love, and to the son he had left behind. Even surrounded by paradise, Odysseus could not escape the steady tug of longing. At dawn, he would walk along the shore, the sand cool beneath his feet, watching as the waves rolled endlessly in and out. The salty breeze carried the distant calls of seabirds and the faint echo of a world beyond. At night, he gazed up at the stars, each one a silent witness to his journey. The constellations told stories of heroes and wanderers, of gods who walked the earth and men who dared to dream. Calypso watched him with a mixture of admiration and sorrow. She knew that no earthly comfort could replace the ties of blood and love, no song soothed the ache of a soul torn from its roots. One evening, as the sky blushed with twilight, Calypso spoke softly. "Why do you grieve, Odysseus? Here, you are safe. Stay with me, and I will grant you a gift no mortal has ever known, immortality, the blessing of endless days and nights without pain or sorrow." Odysseus looked at her, his voice steady though filled with quiet sadness. "Immortality is a gift, but not one I desire. My heart belongs to my home, to the life I have lived, and the people I love. No paradise can replace that." Far above, in the bright halls of Olympus, the gods observed Odysseus's fate. Athena, goddess of wisdom and protector of heroes, spoke with urgency to Zeus, king of the gods. "Let Odysseus return home," she urged. "His journey has been long and filled with suffering. His place is with his family." Zeus, with a nod, sent Hermes, the swift messenger, to Calypso's island with a command. When Hermes arrived, Calypso greeted him with grace, though her heart was heavy. "The gods have spoken," Hermes said. "Odysseus must be set free." Calypso, though sorrowful, accepted the decree. She knew love meant sometimes letting go. Calypso helped Odysseus build a raft strong enough to face the wide, open sea. Together, they gathered wood, tied beams with care, and fashioned a sturdy vessel. She gave him food, fresh water, and a cloak to protect against the cold winds of the ocean. On the final night, beneath a sky filled with stars, Calypso stood beside Odysseus. "May the winds be gentle," she whispered. "May the stars guide your way." Odysseus nodded, feeling the weight of farewell and the spark of hope. At dawn, Odysseus pushed the raft into the water. The sea greeted him with gentle waves, the horizon wide and endless. Though the island faded behind him like a dream, Odysseus's heart beat strong with purpose. The journey ahead would be hard, the sea vast and unpredictable, but the promise of home shone bright. With steady hands and quiet resolve, he faced forward, toward the distant shores of Ithaca, toward the embrace of the life he had longed for through so many years. The sea sang its ancient song, carrying him onward. After days adrift on the open sea, guided only by the mercy of the waves and the favor of the gods, Odysseus finally reached a shore unlike any he had seen before. His raft, battered but whole, washed gently upon the sands of a land wrapped in mystery and shimmering with promise. Here, the air was cool and fresh, scented with salt and the fragrance of blooming flowers. The landscape rolled in soft hills, crowned with tall trees whose leaves whispered softly in the wind. Far off, the sound of laughter and music drifted like a warm embrace. Odysseus, still weary but steady, pulled himself onto the beach. His eyes searched the horizon and then the surrounding forest, knowing that this was the beginning of a new chapter in his long journey home. As he ventured inward, the sound of voices grew clearer, voices filled with warmth and welcome. This was the land of the Phaeacians, a people blessed by the gods with skill in sailing and crafts, known far and wide for their kindness and hospitality. Their kingdom, ruled by King Alcinous and Queen Arete, was a place where songs and stories flowed like rivers, and the sea was a faithful friend. The Phaeacians lived in a city of shining marble and fine gardens, where children played beneath the shade of olive trees and craftsmen worked with joy and care. The streets hummed with life, but with a peace that seemed untouched by war or strife. Odysseus felt a flicker of hope stirring in his chest. Perhaps here, at last, his long voyage might find rest. As Odysseus rested by the water's edge, drying his soaked cloak, a young princess named Nausicaa appeared, accompanied by her maids. They had come to the river to wash their clothes, their laughter sparkling like the bright morning sun. Nausicaa was radiant, her hair shining, her eyes bright with kindness and curiosity. She saw Odysseus, a stranger and a traveler, and though startled at first, she was moved by the quiet strength in his gaze. With gentle words, she approached him. "Stranger, you must come with us," she said softly. "The king and queen will welcome you, and you will find rest and friendship here." Odysseus, grateful and hopeful, accepted the invitation. After Odysseus accepted Nausicaa's kind invitation, she and her handmaidens led him away from the shore, through softly swaying groves of olive and cypress trees. The morning sun filtered through leaves, dappling the path in gold and green. The air smelled of sea salt and fresh earth, mixed with the faint perfume of wildflowers growing along the way. Odysseus walked slowly, his steps steady but weary. His clothes hung damp on his frame, his hair tangled by wind and water, yet the kindness in Nausicaa's smile was like a balm to his tired heart. The laughter of the princess and her maids rang out lightly, and Odysseus felt, for a moment, the weight of years lift ever so slightly. As they approached the city, the landscape opened to reveal a realm of astonishing beauty. The streets were paved with smooth stones that gleamed like polished ivory, winding past marble houses with red-tiled roofs and carved wooden balconies draped in vines heavy with grapes and sweet figures. Children played nearby, chasing one another beneath fountains that sang with water's clear song. The palace of King Alcinous rose beyond the city, majestic and serene. Its walls shone with a pale, warm light, crafted from stone that seemed to capture and hold the sun itself. The entrance was guarded by 2 lions, statues so lifelike they appeared ready to spring to life at any moment. Nausicaa led Odysseus to the great doors, where guards clad in gleaming bronze armor stood with spears held upright but relaxed. The guards recognized the princess and bowed their heads respectfully as she passed. Odysseus followed, a stranger stepping into a world both foreign and wondrous. Inside, the palace was cool and shadowed, with high ceilings supported by columns carved with scenes of the sea and sky. The walls were adorned with tapestries depicting heroes and gods, their colors vivid even after many years. King Alcinous awaited them in a throne room decorated with gold and lapis lazuli. His beard was thick and silver, his eyes kind but sharp, a man both regal and approachable. At his side stood Queen Arete, graceful and wise, her presence calm and commanding. "Welcome, Odysseus, son of Laertes," the king said, his voice deep and full of warmth. "You have traveled far and faced many dangers. Here you will find rest and friendship." Queen Arete smiled gently. "Tell us of your journey, noble traveler. We are honored by your presence." Odysseus bowed his head in gratitude. Though his voice was tired, it held the strength of one who has endured much. "Great king and queen, I am but a man lost to time and fate. My journey has been long and filled with sorrow, but your kindness brings hope. That evening, a feast was prepared in Odysseus's honor. The great hall filled with the scent of roasted meats, fresh fruits, fragrant herbs, and sweet honey cakes. The tables groaned beneath platters of olives, cheeses, and fish caught fresh from the sea. Torches flickered softly, casting dancing shadows across the faces of nobles and servants alike. Musicians took their places, their lyres and flutes tuning to the quiet hum of anticipation. The first notes rose, delicate and clear, weaving a melody that seemed to flow like the gentle tide. The hall grew silent as the music embraced all present, carrying them to distant lands and times. Bards sang of gods and mortals, of mighty Poseidon, of wise Athena, and of heroes whose names were etched forever in the stars. The stories spoke of honor and loss, of courage and fate. When the feast quieted, Odysseus was invited to share his tale. The room held its breath as he began, his voice steady but soft, weaving a tapestry of words. He spoke first of Troy, the long war, the burning city, the friends fallen to swords and spears. He told of the rage of the gods, the wrath of Poseidon who had turned the sea against him. Of storms and monsters, of the Cyclops Polyphemus whose single, terrible eye marked him forever. His voice carried the weight of years and loss, the haunting song of a man who had wandered far from home. The Phaeacians listened, their hearts opening wide with empathy and wonder. He told of Circe's island and the dark journey to the underworld, of the siren song that called to death, and of the narrow escape from the whirlpool Charybdis and the six-headed Scylla. Through it all, his yearning for Ithaca shone brightly, like a flame that refused to be extinguished. When Odysseus finished, silence filled the hall. Then King Alcinous rose, his voice ringing with resolve. Odysseus, your tale moves us deeply. You have endured the will of the gods and the whims of fate. Here, in the land of the Phaeacians, you shall find allies and safe passage home. The king summoned his finest ship and crew, men skilled in every art of the sea, their hands steady and their spirits sure. They prepared a vessel like none Odysseus had ever seen, a swift ship, sleek and shining, with sails that billowed like clouds and a hull shaped to cut through waves like a knife through silk. The sailors worked with quiet dedication, fitting the ship with ropes and oars, shining the bronze fittings until they gleamed in the sun. The night before he was to leave, Odysseus lay beneath the stars in the palace garden. The air was cool and fragrant, the gentle rustle of leaves a lullaby. Queen Arete approached quietly and sat beside him. Rest well, Odysseus. Tomorrow, the sea will carry you home. Odysseus nodded, his heart heavy with gratitude and longing. It feels like a dream, a chance to finally come home after so long. The queen smiled softly, her eyes full of wisdom. May the gods guide you, and may your journey be swift and safe. At dawn, the ship slid into the calm sea, its sails catching the morning light. The Phaeacians cheered softly from the shore, their voices carried by the breeze. Odysseus stood at the prow, the wind in his hair and the endless ocean before him. The sea stretched wide and open, a vast path leading to Ithaca. The ship moved like a living thing, swift and sure, cutting through the water with grace. With every mile, Odysseus's heart grew lighter, buoyed by hope and the promise of reunion. The stars above twinkled softly, watching over the voyage as the ship sailed steadily toward home. Odysseus was now alone, standing on the shores of his beloved Ithaca after a long, perilous journey across the sea, guided safely by the kindness of the Phaeacians. The sight of his homeland, at last, stirred a quiet joy deep within his heart, a joy mingled with the weight of years spent far away, and the knowledge that many challenges still lay ahead. The island stretched before him like a sleeping giant, its hills rolling softly into the distance, its olive groves whispering in the gentle breeze, and the waves breaking softly upon the rocky shores. Though the land was familiar, Odysseus knew that time had passed. His palace, his household, and the very people he loved had endured struggles in his absence. The air smelled of salt and pine, warmed by the soft golden light of the late afternoon sun. It was a moment heavy with promise, and yet fragile with uncertainty. Odysseus slipped quietly through the hills, keeping to the shadows as dusk began to fall. The island was still, but not empty. Somewhere nearby, the low murmur of voices rose from the village below, punctuated by laughter and the occasional clang of metal. The suitors, those men who sought his wife Penelope's hand and his throne, were gathering, their presence a constant reminder of the kingdom's unrest. The king's heart tightened. To reclaim what was his, he must tread carefully, like a hunter in the night. Athena had promised her guidance, but it was Odysseus who must act with patience and cunning. With a deep breath, Odysseus stepped into the role the goddess gave him, a beggar, ragged and worn, forgotten by the world. His hair hung in matted strands, his face shadowed and marked by years of hardship. The king of Ithaca had become a man who could pass unnoticed. This disguise was not just a mask but a shield. Only by hiding in plain sight could he learn the truth of his household and prepare to face those who had taken over his home. Odysseus's first stop was the humble hut of Eumaeus, his loyal swineherd. The old man had waited faithfully through the years, tending the pigs and keeping the memory of his absent master alive in his heart. When Odysseus approached the small dwelling, the firelight spilled warmly from the window, and the smell of roasting meat filled the cool evening air. Eumaeus welcomed the stranger with kind eyes and open arms, offering food and shelter without hesitation. To him, the beggar was just another weary traveler, but his kindness was unwavering. The two men spoke long into the night. Odysseus listened to tales of the suitors' excesses and Penelope's quiet sorrow. Eumaeus shared his hope for the day when the rightful king would return. Though the swineherd did not know the beggar's true identity, his loyalty shone like a beacon in the darkness. In the days that followed, Odysseus observed his home from afar. The palace, once a place of order and grace, was now filled with noise and chaos. The suitors feasted and gambled, their laughter loud and careless. They drank wine and consumed the wealth of the kingdom, ignoring the wishes of the gods and the pain they caused the queen. Penelope remained poised and dignified, though a sadness lingered in her eyes. She wove her loom by day and unraveled it by night, a clever ruse to delay her decision about remarriage. Odysseus's heart ached for her, and yet he knew he must wait. The time to reveal himself had not yet come. One day, Athena guided Odysseus to the son he had not seen since he was a boy, Telemachus, now a young man with the bearing of a prince. Their meeting was quiet and cautious. Odysseus, still in disguise, approached the palace grounds where Telemachus had been watching the suitors. At first, Telemachus did not recognize the beggar, but something in his voice, in his manner, stirred a feeling deep within. The two spoke in hushed tones beneath the shade of an olive tree. Odysseus revealed little, but the bond between father and son began to rekindle. Together, they formed a plan to reclaim the palace and restore order. Penelope, desperate to know if her husband was truly gone or if fate would return him, devised a test. She would present Odysseus's great bow, the weapon only he could string, and challenge the suitors to string it and shoot an arrow through 12 axe heads, lined carefully in a row. One by one, the suitors failed. Their laughter turned to frustration. Odysseus, still in disguise, asked for a chance. At first, the suitors mocked him, but Penelope's quiet nod gave him permission. With a steady hand, Odysseus strung the bow. The string hummed softly as the arrow flew true, piercing each axe head perfectly. A hush fell over the hall. In that moment, Odysseus cast off his disguise. His voice rang out clear and strong as he declared himself the true king. The suitors rose in anger and disbelief, but Odysseus was prepared. With the help of Telemachus and loyal servants, he fought fiercely and with purpose. One by one, the suitors fell, their threats silenced by the skill and fury of the man they had wronged. When the battle was over, Odysseus sought Penelope. She met him with tears and questions, unsure if the weary man before her was truly her husband or a trick of the gods. To test him, she spoke of their secret, the bed he had built himself, carved from the roots of an ancient olive tree, immovable and eternal. Only Odysseus could know this secret. His smile was gentle as he described the bed, and Penelope's heart swelled with joy. At last, their embrace was tender and complete, the reunion of two souls who had been separated by fate but bound by love. The kingdom slowly returned to its natural harmony. Odysseus ruled wisely and justly, with Athena's guidance and Penelope's steadfast support. The fields flourished again, the olive trees heavy with fruit, and the sea sang gentle songs to the shores. Odysseus's journey had come full circle. The trials of years past were behind him, and the promise of peace stretched out like the calm sea before him. And so, after many years filled with hardship, loss, and unyielding hope, Odysseus finally returned to Ithaca. His journey, long and winding as the sea itself, had tested him in ways few men could imagine. He had faced monsters both terrible and cunning, endured the wrath of gods and the treachery of mortals, and yet, through it all, his spirit remained unbroken. In his return, we find not only the end of a story but the beginning of something more profound, the restoration of home, the rekindling of love, and the quiet power of patience and wisdom. In his return, we find not only the end of a story but the beginning of something more profound, the restoration of home, the rekindling of love, and the quiet power of patience and wisdom. There is something sacred about the idea of home. More than a place, it is a feeling, a presence that lives within the heart. For Odysseus, Ithaca was that beacon, the light he sought in darkness, the whisper of the past that guided his steps through storm and shadow. Home was where Penelope waited, weaving hope with her own hands. Home was where Telemachus grew into a man worthy of his father's name. Home was where the land itself breathed with memories and dreams. In every step Odysseus took toward that shore, he carried more than the weight of his body, he carried the hopes of all who awaited him, and the strength of a will that refused to give up. Odysseus' story reminds us that the journey is often as important as the destination. His adventures were not merely obstacles to overcome but lessons to be learned about resilience, humility, and the delicate balance between fate and free will. He learned to listen, to wait, and to choose his moments wisely. He discovered that strength is not always loud or violent, but sometimes quiet and patient. He understood that true power lies in wisdom and compassion, as much as in skill with a sword. Throughout Odysseus' journey, the gods played their part, sometimes cruel, sometimes kind. Athena's guidance was a beacon in the darkness, while Poseidon's wrath was a storm to weather. In this dance between mortal and divine, we see a reflection of life itself, where forces beyond our control shape our path, yet our choices, our courage, and our hearts determine how we walk it. Odysseus' story is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit amid the whims of fate. When Odysseus finally reclaimed his palace, it was not merely a victory over his enemies, but a restoration of balance and justice. The suitors, who had disrespected the household and the gods, were defeated not with cruelty, but with the righteous power of the true king. Peace returned to Ithaca, not simply the silence after battle, but a deeper harmony between past and future, between the land and its people. Odysseus' reign became one of wisdom, fairness, and love, a reminder that leadership is a sacred trust. Perhaps the greatest triumph in Odysseus' return was the reunion with Penelope, whose faith and cleverness had kept hope alive through long years of uncertainty. Their love, tested by time and trial, endured. Telemachus, too, embodied the legacy of loyalty and courage, stepping into his role as heir with strength and respect. In these relationships, we find the heart of the story, the bonds that sustain us, the trust that grounds us, and the patience that ultimately rewards. Odysseus' journey has been told and retold through the ages because it speaks to something timeless within us all, the desire to find our way home, to overcome hardship, and to be reunited with what we love. His tale is both an adventure and a meditation, a saga of heroes and gods, but also a quiet reflection on human resilience. As you listen, may you feel the calm of the sea, the whisper of the wind through olive trees, and the peace that comes with the end of a long journey. Thank you for joining this voyage through the story of Odysseus. May your own journeys, wherever they take you, be filled with courage, wisdom, and the gentle light of home.